The Kiev regime has set itself the goal of damaging our economy. What has it done? It has opened this Pandora's box all by itself. At the same time, the proposals being put to us are, at times, I would say, rather outlandish and are unacceptable. The Russian strikes on Ukraine's infrastructure are effective, they are timely, and without a doubt, they help our servicemen, our guys, our heroes on the front line to carry out the combat tasks set before them. As for what is happening now, this is, of course, the result of yet another reckless move by the Kiev regime and its Western backers, who have set out to inflict yet another strategic defeat on Russia. This time, as is well known, within 40 days and by means of massive missile strikes and UAV attacks on our civilian infrastructure and logistics. A public declaration was made stating the aim to destroy entire sectors of our country's economy and to undermine the unity of our people and the cohesion of Russian society. In short, the aim is to bring Russia to the brink of collapse, something they have long dreamt of and constantly talk about. As is well known, this 40-day period expired on August 5th. And so, the question arises, what is the result? Of course, strikes against civilian, virtually unprotected targets and, most importantly, against civilians, cause economic damage to our country and result in losses. And the loss of every single person, I want to emphasize this, is always a tragedy. For the family, for loved ones, and for the whole country. We know full well that the Nazis during the Great Patriotic War and the Second World War, and the neo-Nazis today, derived, and, by all accounts, continue to derive, a particular sense of satisfaction and pleasure from committing such crimes, and we can see that these crimes are continuing. Yet the outcome for the enemy was the exact opposite of what was expected. Of course, no turning point in the confrontation with Russia occurred, nor could it have done. The Kiev regime and its patrons cannot gain any advantage, have not gained one, and never will. Moreover, in response to this obvious escalation, and I emphasize obvious, which is not based on an objective analysis of the situation on the battlefield or the state of the Ukrainian economy, society, and state, which is being eroded by corruption, but rather on public relations and political ambitions. In response to this reckless venture, we have indeed stepped up our strikes, as you have just mentioned. We have stepped up strikes against enterprises in Ukraine's defense industrial complex, including those in Kiev, and have begun to respond to the enemy's actions against our civilian industrial and logistics facilities. The Kiev regime has set itself the goal of damaging our economy. What has it done? It has opened this Pandora's box all by itself. Well then, you'll get a response targeting your most vulnerable economic sectors, which, to be honest, are already on their last legs. This, incidentally, also applies to agricultural production, from the export of which the Kiev regime receives its main income. Moving on, do you want to disrupt our logistics? We might ask the enemy this question. Well then, a response will not be long in coming. Here you go. At the same time, the actions of the Russian army are, of course, far more devastating and far more destructive. I have said time and again, there will always be a response. And most importantly, the enemy's actions have had absolutely no impact on the situation at the front. Moreover, our troops are not only continuing their offensive on all fronts, but have also stepped up the pace of their advance. The Russian armed forces are confidently carrying out their tasks to fully achieve the objectives of the special military operation. Of course, in doing so, we must and will continue to improve our air defense system and enhance its capabilities. We need to improve coordination between security and civilian agencies at all levels and to harness the capabilities of state-owned enterprises and the private sector. This is particularly important in the run-up to the elections to the State Duma and other governing bodies. The adversary is attempting to intimidate us and disrupt the elections. We will not allow it to do so. I am confident that this attempt to exert informational and psychological influence on Russian society is doomed to failure. We will, of course, continue to strengthen Russian statehood and the legitimacy of the authorities. At the same time, Russia's response to yet another provocation by the Kiev regime appears, by all accounts, to be a highly sensitive issue for them, leading to serious consequences and bringing the situation in a number of key areas to a critical level. That is precisely why today the Kiev authorities, through intermediaries whose views we certainly respect, are attempting to extricate themselves from the situation in which they find themselves, a situation which, I wish to emphasize, they themselves have provoked. The Kiev regime is trying to prevent this situation from taking a catastrophic turn, and such trends, it would appear, are becoming apparent. These trends are becoming evident. At the same time, the proposals being put to us are, at times, I would say, rather outlandish and are unacceptable. We are always ready for dialogue, but only on the basis of the realities on the ground.
I cannot help but ask, what exactly are these rather outlandish proposals?
You know, I'd rather not talk about this right now or go into detail, because it's a sort of feeling out of various avenues for possible agreements. These ideas have been mooted before in one way or another, but now, in this situation, they are being presented in a different light. However, it is still too early to jump the gun and talk about what might form the basis of any potential agreements. The elections are coming soon, firstly. Secondly, after all, I founded this party. Naturally, it would make sense to support it. Incidentally, I would like to thank all the parties represented in Parliament for their statesmanlike and patriotic stance, for the support they provide to the Russian people, to the fatherland, and to me, as head of state, in tackling the most pressing challenges facing the country. What is important is that united Russia has never engaged in populism. This is always important, but it is particularly important today. It is clear that during election campaigns, political parties often set out ambitious promises to win voters' attention and support. They claim these objectives will certainly be achieved, but very often, or to put it mildly, sometimes this is done without any proper professional analysis, without understanding the sources of funding to achieve the objectives, or a thorough professional assessment of the associated consequences, and so on. Of course, I repeat, all political parties are tempted to do this. United Russia, however, seeks to resist such temptations and conduct itself in a measured, professional, and responsible manner. This, in my view, is the most important thing. The Russian strikes on Ukraine's infrastructure are effective, they are timely, and without a doubt, they help our servicemen, our guys, our heroes on the front line to carry out the combat tasks set before them. Why? Because this hampers the delivery of equipment, ammunition, and troop rotations on the line of contact. This hinders the ability of defense industry enterprises to improve their weapons. And such improvements are taking place with direct involvement, not merely the support, of Western sponsors. Of course, this directly and positively affects military operations in terms of achieving military objectives.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now.